A very good afternoon to everybody. Special thanks to all the teachers for their patience. And technically, we should have started 11 minutes earlier, but extremely sorry for this inconvenience. Let's start from here, and I hope we'll make this session a beautiful one. So I'll begin once again. Very good afternoon to every esteemed panel members and respected participants. I am Rupika Tiwari from EdFly, and I'm highly honored to welcome you all to this webinar, in which we'll briefly discuss about the various aspects of our intellectual properties. So this event is being organized by KPB Hinduja College of Commerce, BMS department, in association with EdFly, which is an learning management system. I would also like to wish and acknowledge the participants who have joined us in their support. Thanks a lot. Without you guys and your support, this would have not been possible. Now, we would like to request Dr. Antara Sonawale, Vice Principal of KPB Hinduja College of Commerce, to present her welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much, Rachna. Thank you so much, Rupika. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the participants and the academicians. So today we have arranged this webinar on intellectual property rights. I congratulate KPB Hinduja College and my department members, Department of BMS, for organizing this webinar talking about intellectual property rights. When we say business have many intellectual properties, and it is not something only to deal with the technology. So it is very important for us to appreciate and acknowledge the importance of IT, and it is very necessary to understand the different types of IP rights that we have. And it is very, again, at the same point of time, important how do we protect them. In order to protect those intellectual property, we need to know what are the rights are associated with it and how can we really exercise those. So to understand that and how can we really commercialize these IPs in the best possible way. So being in BMS Department of Management Studies, we have taken this initiative so that our students and the eminent faculties would get more insights on the intellectual property rights. So thank you so much, and I hope all participants will really get from this session. Thank you, Rupika.
Thank you, ma'am. We are honored to conduct this webinar in your gracious presence. Now, I would like to humbly request Dr. Sheetal Modi, our webinar convener and assistant professor at KPB Hinduja College of Commerce, to offer her opening remarks and brief us about the topic of discussion.
My department member BMS, and I thank to the principal Dr. Minu Madlani for giving us this opportunity to organize this wonderful webinar on a very crucial issue or topic known as intellectual property rights. Intellectual property is actually based on human intelligence. It is a creation of the human mind, and this human mind creates wonderful things. But this wonderful thing needs to be protected also, and this leads to creation of wealth for the business and to society. Therefore, these intellectual property rights are very important. The World Intellectual Property Organization established 26th of April, the day for intellectual property rights, and they said that it is important to have the knowledge about the patents, trademarks, designs, and all these various intellectual properties and the impact of these properties in our daily life, our business life. So therefore, I thank all the panelists, Dr. Ms. Rachna, Ms. Shabnam, Sir Pankaj Sir, to please give a good insight into these areas and we all get enriched in this area. Thank you once again to all of you. Thank you, Rupika.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm sure this webinar will be a big success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So before moving ahead, I would like to tell you briefly about the EdFly's new product, which is a learning management system. So our LMS, that is Learning Management System, is called EdFly Learn and is specifically designed to cater to the needs of all members involved in educational ecosystem, be it the lovely students or respected educators or the esteemed institutes all of them can avail the exciting features of our EdFly Learn. Also, with EdFly, the webinars, etc., can also be held more easily. So it's kind of a supporting, like it supports this webinar because we are like trying to make aware about to all the general public about what is this intellectual properties and how it is going to end up in this behave in this digital revolution. So as of now, I would like Mr. Viral Dedia, the co-founder of EdFly, to tell us more about how this platform EdFly works and what is the why is it a real need of our today. Viral, can you take it ahead from here?
Thank you, Rupika, for the introduction. So with EdFly Learn, we have been into education space since quite some time, and we had made a learning management tool since last 3 years. However, with this event, when the schools and colleges uh, are shut right now due to the corona situation, we thought of building this to the next level. So under EdFly Learn, we've got some basic functionality in place. Just to name a few, we've got online virtual classroom training program. Second is we've got communication tools between the parents, teachers, and the students. The third aspect is where we can see all the content that has been uploaded by the teachers on board. So the teachers can upload the content and students will be able to view the content. We'll be able to see the lectures. We'll be able to take the quiz and also work on the assignments. So these are the some few things that we have covered under the LMS. I would suggest that let's use this platform and then we'll be able to figure out the power of what we've built. Okay, over to you, Rupika.
Thank you, Viral. I hope everyone would able to understand the tool and make the best benefit out of it. So, without taking another moment, I would request Ms. Shabnam Khan, Associate Partner at RNA Technology at IP Attorneys, to present an introduction to the topic, intellectual property rights. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Rupika. Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to our webinar on intellectual property. Today, we are going to run you through a short presentation, giving you a brief idea, basics about what intellectual property rights are, what are the different kind of IPs that we have, and why you should be protecting your IP. So we have a brief presentation here, which I would like to share with all of you, and then we'll take it from there. So I hope you all can see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So what is intellectual property? As Sheetal ma'am also mentioned in her introduction, these are the creations of your intellect. This is something which your mind creates and they are very exclusive to you. So intellectual property rights, or IP as we abbreviate it, are the intangible creations of human mind. So it refers to things like, the literary artistic works, the designs, inventions, your symbols, names. IP, does not have a physical form per se, but it commands a material value. When we say material value, which means that it has some value, and in certain cases, that value can even be higher than the value of our tangible assets or property. So let's just take a brief look at. So this is a slide where, there's a lot of confusion about IP. So usually people tend to confuse between different kinds of intellectual property rights. So there's patent, there's copyrights, there are trademarks. So it's very important that you understand what each of these rights talk about. So IPR, or intellectual property rights, are the legally recognized exclusive rights which are given to you for the creation of your mind. They're intangible, territorial, and time-bound. When we say territorial, it means that if you protect it in India, they're protected in India only. If you want protection in US, you need to file for those in US. Time-bound is each of these IPs have life. So these are the different type of IPs that we'll talk about briefly. They include your patents, trademarks, copyrights, line breeders, your designs, GIs, geographical indications, and trade secrets. So we'll start with trademarks. This is the most commonly used form of IP. And if you see, I have a few names here on the slide. These are all trademarks. And knowingly, unknowingly, we actually use most of these brands in our daily life. So any mark which is capable of being represented graphically and which, you know, distinguishes your business from others, that is a trademark. It could be a logo, it could be a device, it could be a name, symbol, tagline, anything at all. So here's a slide which talks about a trademark life cycle. The only purpose of including this slide is that many people think that once you file an application for your IP, which could be a trademark or a design or a patent, it just gets automatically registered, which is not the case. So the trademark goes through a complete life cycle, which has examination bit, which has publication, which has opposition, and then registration. So you see how IP rights, most commonly trademarks, are being copied these days, and there are a lot of counterfeiters, a lot of people in the market who want to just, you know, cash upon the reputation and goodwill of a brand. So I've just put in a few examples here for you to see so that you can understand, and we'll also be talking about this concept in our further presentation. So the next form of IP that I'll talk about is copyrights. Copyrights is something which is, you know, any expression of ideas which includes your artistic or dramatic or, you know, cinematographic kind of work, which includes your scripts of movies, your photographs, your paintings, anything which is an expression of idea. So I have given you a few examples here. If you can see on the slide, these are the kind of works which can be copyrighted. Patents is any invention in the field of technology which is new and which is non-obvious. So when we talk about patents, they are very technical in nature. Something like a software or maybe a layout of a circuit, pharmaceutical formulations, and these all are subject of patents. So patents, you know, it should be a technical product or process. Not everything can be patented. So there are certain criteria for obtaining a patent as well. It designs is another form of IP, which is purely, which is something which appeals to the eye and which is on the visual consideration of aesthetic value of a product. Its functionality is not the consideration. If you see, there are a few sample of bottles here which are different in shape and which are very distinctive from each other. So there are a lot of products which we use in our everyday, life as well, like mineral water bottles or perfume bottles, or oil bottles which have a peculiar shape to them. So all those products which have a different shape and which appeals to the eye can be a subject of a design registration. Trade secrets is something which is very, personal to a business. It could be anything ranging from a recipe of how you make a product, for example, the KFC chicken, or the formula of, the Coke, how you make Coke. Nobody knows how to make Coca-Cola. So it's a very heavily guarded trade secret for Coca-Cola. So some other examples of trade secret may include your, methods of how you function, techniques of how you conduct your business, the processes. There might be some databases which you use, you have some formulas. So all those, things which add economic value to your business are subject matters of trade secrets. So this is geographical indications, which means that, a product which tells you where it originates from, or a territory or country or region from where it comes from. For example, Nagpur orange. So that has a very peculiar quality. It has a reputation of coming from that particular jurisdiction. So it's known to come from a certain source, Alfonso mango. So there are a few examples which I have put in the slide as well. Goa Feni, basmati rice, Darjeeling tea. So these are all products which tell you where they're originating from. So last form of IP that we'll talk about is plant varieties. Plant variety rights or breeders' rights are accorded to new and extant or developed varieties of plants. So if a farmer or a breeder comes up with a new variety of seeds for tomatoes, for example, which are riper, which are less vulnerable to diseases, or which have less number of seeds, anything which is an improvement over an existing kind of a variety is a subject matter of plant variety rights. So now that we talked about intellectual property rights, most of the businesses knowingly or unknowingly own IP. So why is it important to protect our IP? So if you see the slide, I've listed out a few things here to look for, which will give you an idea why we're talking about protection of intellectual property. So A, it provides you with the legal protection. It enhances your brand value, your company value, your image in the market. It gives a consumer, they know that this is a product coming from certain source, so it distinguishes your company from other companies. It gives you an exclusivity to trade under your brand name. It enhances, of course, the goodwill and reputation of your company. And it actually puts the world on notice. So if you have an R over your brand, it tells the world that this is your registered trademark and that they should not copy it because you have a statutory right over that brand. Lastly, monetization of IP and investment from investors. So these days, a lot of startup companies are coming up. The first thing that an investor is going to ask you is your intellectual property protected? Are your ideas patented? Do you have IP protection for your brand, for your patents, or the technology that you're using? So it is extremely, extremely important to, protect your intellectual property rights in that regard. So of all the IPs that we've talked about, I think trademarks are the ones which are mostly copied. You might have come across, brands which are not actually real brands, but they're fakes or they're counterfeits. So it's very, very important to understand as consumers what we are buying, what are our rights, and how we are contributing to, funding mafias which are operating in this space. So I will just, move on with my presentation, and I'll hand over to Rachna ma'am, which she's going to tell you about trademarks and how counterfeiting affects us as individuals and as a society as a whole. Thank you so very much for listening. Over to you, Rachna ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shabnam ma'am. It was indeed, I'm sure everybody would have really understood the basics and from your concepts. And so all the users and all the viewers, I would like to request that if you have any questions related to the discussions we have here, please kindly pose those questions on the live chat. So we'll take up the relevant questions. We'll take up almost all the questions, and we'll be asking those questions at the end of the session. Okay, so let's move ahead. Now, may I please request Ms. Rachna Bakru, partner at RNA Technology and IP attorney, who shall give us her insights on trademark infringements and how to know the difference between the real brands and the copies. Ma'am, may I please request you to please? Huh?
Rachna ma'am, you're on mute.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you, Rupika, for the introduction. And thank you, Shabnam, for laying down the foundation for today's session and sharing information on what IPR are, different types of IPRs, and how to protect them, and what is the importance of protecting them. So I am basically, my experience has been, over 20 years into enforcement of intellectual property rights. So once you have protected your IP rights, how do you enforce them against third parties who are copying your brand names or patents or designs and other types of IPRs? I had the good fortune of working for Fortune 500 companies, helping them enforce their brands in India and other IPRs as well. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of that information on enforcement. And I'm also representing INTA, which is an international body. It's the full form is International Trademark Association. It is located in the United States, and it started from the US initially, but it has members all across the world now in more than 187 countries. There are about 10,000, more than 10,000 members at the moment who are all trademark attorneys. So there are, this INT is a non-profit entity which works on, betterment of brands, basically. Things of consumer benefits, and as well as, how to protect brands and how to work around them, basically education sessions around the world. So I'm a volunteer with one of the committees called Unreal Campaign, which is again a global campaign which we are running to sensitize students across the world on harmful effects of counterfeit products, what it does to the community, how it is harmful to the consumer, and in general, what are the enforcement options. So that is about Unreal Campaign. Is the presentation visible to everyone?
What is the Unreal Campaign? Yes, ma'am. We can see. I'm sure it's your presentation.
I'm having problems in changing the slide. So this is, on a global level, we asked students in different colleges on what was their understanding about counterfeit. I will also post this question to our audience today, and we can, have an interactive session. Students can post their answers in the chat section, and we can have a look at that. So this is the response that we got from students around the world. These are some of the videos I'm sharing.
Do you know what a counterfeit good is?
I think so.
Oh, no.
To be fair, no, I didn't know until you told me. Is it like a fake product? When you buy something that they say is like it's from a certain brand, but then it's not?
It's making fake goods that aren't from the real company and aren't just like the same material. Do you think counterfeiting is bad?
I mean, yeah, I do. I think first off, it's illegal.
The person that actually took time to make it gets no money from it or any type of reward for what they created.
I understand that people have to make their money sometimes. The laborers are paid like minimum wage, or they might not be like safe regulations in like the factories they made it. Not good.
It's just a disappointment. Like, it's sad.
I think you can kind of tell if it's counterfeit if it's like a little bit cheaper quality looking. I don't really think it's a bad thing. I think some people do it because they like, oh, I need to have that kind of brand or something like that. It'll make it look better and stuff. So that's why they want to have it. And like, I don't really like hold it against them.
Next time on the Unreal Video Blog, how can you tell if a product is fake?
Find out what's real or unreal.
So this is what students had to say in other countries. What is their understanding of counterfeit goods? And we also asked them what was their experience of having bought a counterfeit product. And this is
one day I went to this famous flea market in Delhi, and I couldn't help but notice the amazing prices they were offering there. I went up to the salesman. He was constantly telling me about how the products are very real. Even though I was in a bit of doubt, but I was lured in by the fact that the prices were so low, so I just ended up buying the products. Within an hour of applying the makeup, my face turned all red and I had rashes all over my face. I realized the mistake I had made and had to pay the price for buying something unreal.
Find out what's real or unreal.
So this was just to share experiences which students have come across in different countries having bought counterfeit products. We will talk more about it a bit later, but just about the basics of what is a trademark. Shabnam covered that pretty well, that, trademarks are basically, any sign, symbol, word, mark, logo, which is able to distinguish goods of one particular company from the other. So that is the basic function of a trademark. For example, Big Mac is a word mark, as you can see in this slide. Then there are device marks as well. You can see Shell's Pectin device. This is used on the petrol pumps. And, as you can see, there is no word mentioned along with this device. And this device itself is capable of distinguish goods of one particular trader from the other. So in this case, the device acts as a trademark. The common understanding is, that the words and the brand names are only can be protected under trademark, but there are a number of other signs and symbols that can be protected under a trademark as well. So this is an example of a design marks. The shape of this bottle, a consumer recognize, even if the Pepsi word is not written, the consumer can identify by the shape of this bottle that this is this belongs to Pepsi company. So in this case, again, it is able to distinguish the goods. Then we have service marks. Anybody would like to write on the chat column what is their understanding of service marks? So basically, service marks are different from trademarks because these are used in the services. For example, banking industry, education industry, hospitality, hospitals, anything that is related to service. Sometimes we feel that, for example, Medanta for hospitals, that this is not a brand name, but it is. There is a separate category on the trademark register for registration of service marks. Then there are new type of trademarks which have recently come up in the last couple of years, which are called non-traditional trademarks. Again, these are separate from words, logos, devices, which I just now discussed. There are new types of trademarks, for example, color marks. In this case, Perrier, the green color used for the Perrier bottle, is able to identify the trader, Perrier, with the color of the bottle. So there are no other traders in the market who are using this green color for this particular Perrier water bottle. So even if the word Perrier is removed from this bottle, the consumer is able to quickly identify that this is Perrier water. So in this case, again, due to a continuous use over a period of time, this trader has established goodwill and reputation in the single color as well. Although that said, it is not very easy to register a single color because colors exist in the nature, and trademark rights are monopoly rights, they're exclusive rights. So it is not fair to stop others from using a green color, for example. So it is a very, very difficult to register non-conventional trademarks, and the traders have to establish huge goodwill and reputation that they have acquired distinctiveness, that the consumer is able to think of only them and no one else, and only then these kind of color marks can be registered. Again, you all must be familiar with Nivea cream, this container with the blue color. All our moms and grandmoms, I think, quickly identify that this is Nivea cream. Irrespective of whether this container bears this Nivea cream trademark, even if you remove it, people will still, say that this is Nivea cream. They will identify it quickly. So again, over here, this blue color is acting as a trademark, and it can be registered. In certain countries, it is possible to register single color, and in other countries, it is only possible to register color combination. For example, Standard Chartered uses green and blue corporate color combinations. So that is, that has acquired distinctiveness, and consumers do identify that with SCB, and then it is possible to register those combination of colors. This is again another example of a 3D mark. McDonald's consistently uses yellow color on its canopies outside the main entrance, as well as on the windows, as you can see in this picture. So McDonald's has obtained a 3D mark registration for this particular, use of its branding. And so again, even if this McDonald's logo and the word is removed, consumer is able to identify that this is a McDonald's joint. And in this case, this is a non-traditional trademark 3D mark, which is able to identify goods of McDonald's from others. So this is a registrable mark under the Trademarks Act. So why are trademarks important for you? I would again request, if it was a physical engagement program, I would have asked the participants of what is their understanding of why the trademarks are important for you. So feel free to share your views in the chat column, and we can have a look at that. So trademarks basically are useful for the consumers because they help. These are like names, like we all have names, and we are able to identify each other from our names. So consumer is able to identify and quickly find out the product that they are looking for. If they're looking for certain XYZ qualities or characteristics in a particular product, then trademarks help them to find those in the market where there's so many products available. So that is a unique identifying feature which a trademark represents about a particular product. And why are trademarks important for companies? Because again, brand names, they help the companies to promote their products under a particular name, and the consumers identify that this particular product will be of a certain quality, have certain characteristics, a certain pricing, if it is coming from this particular brand. So that is how trademarks help to identify products of one particular trader from the other. What is counterfeiting? I would have loved to hear what students understand by the word counterfeiting. And please feel free to write on the chat. Actually, in the technical language, there are two types of ways in which the trademarks are misused by third parties. One is counterfeiting, where a third party is who is not authorized to use a trademark, uses a trademark and the packaging on an identical product. In that case, we call it counterfeiting. I will share with you some examples in the subsequent slides, but it is basically making a fake product, making a look-alike product so that the consumer is confused. It's called knockoff. So then there is a trademark infringement where the traders are clever. So they use a similar trademark. They change slightly, bring some changes in the packaging, a different color combination sometimes, or a close color combination. And then, so that is called trademark infringement, where the marks are not identical, but they are deceptively similar or confusingly similar, as we call it. So the consumer, if it is an illiterate consumer or even otherwise, they get confused into whether it is the same source, whether it is original or duplicate. So these are two different things, counterfeiting and trademark infringement. How does counterfeiting affect a consumer? Again, I would have liked to ask everyone, how does it affect you? So the consumers, when they have a certain expectation from a product, if they buy a counterfeit product, obviously that expectation is not met. Sometimes you do get a good deal, especially on bags and shoes and some luxury items. People have seen buying counterfeit products because they get a good deal, but what in the bargain, what you're losing out is on a good quality product. Sometimes there are health and safety issues, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, in the FMCG industry, and electronics, automobile spare parts, where there's a lot of counterfeiting happening at the moment. So over there, the consumer is losing out on a good quality product, durability, as well as health and safety hazards, which the counterfeit product could be posing.
So I'm 16 and I want everything branded. It's all about the image after all. But this chase for image ended recently when I was embarrassed in front of all my friends. I had bought a pair of fake branded shoes from a nearby market. It was almost 1/10 the real price. I went running with all my friends, and while I was kind of showing off my new shoes, my new shoe broke and I fell flat on the ground. And I understood why real remains real and fake is always fake.
Find out what's real or unreal.
So that was an example of a young boy, coming in the peer pressure, having bought a counterfeit product, and how it has impacted his, reputation with amongst his colleagues, amongst his friends, as well as, a waste of money buying a low quality product that doesn't last. How does counterfeiting affect your community? Again, lots of reasons. If a small third party is manufacturing counterfeit products, they're not sometimes, if you see, I will show you in the subsequent slides how they're operating under the conditions. Sometimes the conditions are very unhygienic. Sometimes they're using child labor. The employees' welfare is not taken into account, and they are being made to work under, unsafe working conditions. So it is basically, they're trying to make a quick buck, and not paying their taxes, using, people, making people work under unhygienic conditions, not paying their salaries regularly. So those kind of factors have an impact directly on the community, because again, the taxes are not being paid. So if the taxes had gone to the government, they would have invested it into parks, into community health and welfare. So, and then because these people are not paying taxes, because they are not paying their employees and they are using substandard products, the extra money that they make is sometimes used to fund terrorism and other, smuggling activities. So overall, it is not a very good proposition for the community. The big, the MNCs who are investing into their employees, they are helping generate employment. They're taking care of their the welfare of their employees, producing good quality product. Which also is helpful for the consumer, is paying the taxes, is also caring about the environment that they are working in. So they're not, they're using methods which are sustainable, which take care of the environment in general. So overall, there is a direct impact of, a consumer who's buying a genuine product as opposed to a counterfeit product. Have you ever seen a counterfeit good in a developing country like ours? I think we all have seen counterfeit products. We all have experienced having bought a counterfeit product at some point or the other in flea markets or online now on the online platform. Sometimes we see something else and we end up getting something else. This is an example of Beats headphone by Dr. Dre. Again, an example of an online platform, counterfeit available on online platform. So this headphone is usually, it costs for about $200 to $300. And over here it is being provided for like $20. And it is like, a quick sale, take it or leave it. The offer will last for 3 hours, sorry. So these kind of things, it is very obvious that there's so much of a huge price difference between the original product and the one which is being offered, that the consumers can make out that it is a fake product. And sometimes what you actually see, as I just now said, on the e-commerce platform is not what you actually get when it comes to you. This is also an example of a real product versus a fake product. So how consumers can identify, the swoosh device in this one is, the device is different. The stitching, the thread, this is a close thread stitching, which is more durable. And this is a bigger stitch, which is not so durable. So when a person is buying a pair of sneakers, they do want to buy something which is comfortable, something that is durable, something that doesn't hurt their health, their foot, which ultimately will have an impact on the spine. So it is important to buy even for goods like these, which, sometimes people feel that it is okay to, not to bother about, what product they're buying, but it is actually in the long run, it does have an impact on health. Again, batteries, phone chargers, it is easier to buy a fake product. It is much cheaper. Sometimes, a person feels, why should I waste money? But actually, we've all seen at some point or the other that the fake chargers don't last for long. They're not safe for health. They can cause fires because each, when the company makes a phone charger, it is tailored to the device, how much energy the device actually needs. Whereas these generic chargers, they release the same amount of energy irrespective of the device. So sometimes the batteries get heated up and they can end up in a fire. So again, electronic products, automobile spare parts, pharmaceuticals, FMCG goods, they all have health and safety issues if you're buying a counterfeit product. How are trademarks protected from counterfeiting? Now, every country has their own laws, rules and regulations. In our country, we have a couple of, laws. We have civil enforcement. So if a brand is infringed, the brand owner can go to a civil court and file a lawsuit for trademark infringement. There is criminal enforcement going through the district criminal courts, similar remedy. There is border controls, customs. So a brand owner can register their brand names with all the customs in India, across India. And if the counterfeit products are coming from overseas, like for example, if they're coming from China, then customs will stop those consignment and ask the brand owner whether it is original or duplicate and whether it should be released or it should be kept there. So there are mechanisms in place. There is police raids, as you may have read in the newspapers as well. Police does suo moto raids as well on their own. When, especially in the case of pharmaceutical products, you would have seen that there are lots of raids which happen by the police on their own as well. I can share details of these options if there are questions in the Q&A time that we have. These are the two examples of fake and original product, just for the consumers to understand how they can, identify, how they can distinguish a counterfeit and a fake product. So as you can see that the left side product looks original and the right one looks fake. Similarly here, the left Taza chai looks original and the right hand side looks like a fake product. This is an example which I was talking about, that the trademark is not copied. So they haven't used the mark Castrol CRB, but they have used a lookalike color scheme. So this can easily be passed off in the hands of the consumer, especially if the consumer is not literate. These are also some more examples of original and duplicate. This is one of the videos we took when we carried out a raid. I think it was against a garment manufacturer, just to give you a flavor of how This was just to give you an example, a flavor of, the way we carry out raids with the police. These are the unhygienic conditions which I was talking about, that how fake products are refilled. I think this was one of the medicines that, the place that we had raided. So this is how the medicines were being filled. This is a lubricant. Again, I wanted to show you some images of how fake lubricant is being filled in the used
We were out in the
containers.
market, the entire family, shopping in Delhi summers. Everyone was tired and thirsty. So I just ran down to a local shop and I bought a mineral water for ₹20. Familiar price and very familiar shape and packaging. It did satisfy our thirst, but everyone has the same remark. It tastes bitter. Nothing really happened, but our fears could have come true despite paying for safe water. A lesson learned was that one should always look closely into the details while buying anything, even if it's water.
Find out what's real or unreal.
This was an example of a consumer having bought a counterfeit
Welcome
product.
to the streets of New York City, where all the latest trends, styles, and fashions are born, which is why having the right look is a must.
Living in the city could be expensive, and I'm a student, so I can't always afford my favorite brand name products. However, I did have enough money for this $10 bag I passed from the vendor earlier today. So why not save some money? What's the big deal?
Let me tell you why it's a big deal. By purchasing counterfeit items, you're buying into an illegal business that costs our economy billions of dollars each year. It also costs around 2.5 million jobs every year. This could be your neighbors, your friends, or even your parents' job. Beyond that, counterfeiting is linked to child labor and organized crime. Where do you think those fake products come from? Where do you think the money goes? Now, do you really think those $5 sunglasses were worth it?
Counterfeit goods go beyond clothing and accessories. They also include toys, baby formula, medication, electronics, cigarettes, and even airplane or automobile parts. In nearly every instance, counterfeit goods are not made with the same high-quality materials or standards as regular products. These things can lead to serious health and safety concerns for the consumer, like you and me.
You're right. I'm never buying counterfeit again.
Find out what's real or unreal.
I think I'm going to skip this game time. This is basically to spot a fake, but I think we are running short of time, so I will hand over to the next speaker, Pankaj Aseri. Pankaj, over to you.
I'll just interrupt and say thanks a lot, ma'am. It was really, really very helpful at least I'm going to use this knowledge for sure whenever I'm going to go for marketing in these local shops. I'll try to make best use of it. Thank you. At least it was very helpful for me. Meanwhile, ma'am, we have few questions as well, which were posted on YouTube, and there are few messages also. So before we move on to the next participants, just if I just wanted to confirm with you if you want to take the questions. I've just posted those questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think I'll go through the questions, but because we're running short of time, let's first hear Pankaj, and then we can address all the questions together.
Sure, ma'am. That would be amazing. That would be perfect idea to move ahead. So now, may I please humbly request Mr. Pankaj Aseri, counterfeiting lead for the Indian subcontinent at Novartis Healthcare Private Limited, to help us understand the trademark issues faced in the pharma industry. Sir, please.
Sure. Thank you, Rupika. Thank you, Rachna. That was wonderful. I think Shabnam laid down a very good foundation, and Rachna took it to another level, giving real examples ranging from different industries. So just a bit about myself. My name is Pankaj Aseri. I work with a pharma company called Novartis Healthcare Private Limited. What we are going to talking about today, specifically my domain is pharmaceuticals, and why it is important and why we have that in our session is because it is one of the most impacted industries as far as the counterfeiting is concerned. So I'll start with sharing my screen and take you through what I have in my deck so that you have a reference to rely on. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see Pankaj.
All right. So how big is the industry for counterfeiters in pharmaceutical industry? It's huge. It is the second most impacted, as I told everyone. There was a study conducted by EU IP office, so European Union Intellectual Property Office, and it said out of 11 industries that are impacted, pharmaceutical industry is the second most impacted. Now that is even more scary because if it is any other industry, it has risks. Like, let's say if it's apparel, it has its own risk, but pharmaceuticals are consumed by people. It has a risk of life and death of people. So falsified medicine is something that is now evolving term over counterfeits. In general, counterfeits are imitated product, look exactly the same but does not come from the same producer. So to give you an example, let's say if you're consuming Crocin, it comes from a particular company, but there is a Crocin that's manufactured by someone else, but it says it's the same company on the packaging. I'm sure you will think twice before consuming that. So those are the kind of things and risks that we run into. There are very recently, there is Interpol and Europol alert issued, which says COVID-19 is a pandemic, but counterfeit medicines is going to be a parallel pandemic which will run along with it. So the risk is so huge. This is a huge opportunity for the counterfeiters to push in their product because we are busy doing other things. The administration, the police, the customs, everybody is busy doing other things. So we need to be extra cautious in this time to not to fall in the parallel pandemic of counterfeit medicines. Just to give you an example, about 90% of the online pharmacies that operate worldwide are providing fake products to people. Annual estimate of deaths just in one continent, sub-Saharan Africa, is about 72,000 people per year. So you can imagine what the gravity of the situation is and why we're particularly taking pharma industry in this discussion. pharma crime or pharmaceutical counterfeiting, crime against crime of making falsified medicine is everywhere. You can see it online. It's in the news everywhere. In these times as well, people are still making it. So I've been using counterfeiting and pharma crime simultaneously. What is pharma crime and what is how is it different from counterfeiting is a legit question that anybody can ask. So let me give you an example. So a counterfeit product is an imitation of the real product. Everything in terms of looks will look similar, but what you have inside of a medicine may not be the same. And there are all kind of variations that counterfeiters try. They're only concerned about imitating the looks of it and not concerned about anything else. So to elaborate more on that, you can have a package of, let's say, 50 products. 10 of those in that big pack, 10 of the products would be counterfeit and the remaining can be original. So you need to be very careful what you're buying in a bigger pack, whether they're all of the same quality and standard and coming from the same source, or they have some variation. So that's the point where you should apply some more thought to it before you consume it, particularly pharma products. There are thefts that occur regularly. We've seen it everywhere in the developed nations, in India, in the US, EU, everywhere these things happen. So they're typically stolen from government bodies who procure it for supplying it to their employees or people who are of poorer section. And these are then sold to counterfeiters or sold in other countries and profits are generated. Now, a very legit question that I'm often asked, what's the problem if the pharmaceutical products are stolen and then sold it to somebody else? There are two reasons and two main ones. There are several other, but I'll give you just two. A, the money is used for illegal activities in most of the cases. B, all the pharma products come with a storage condition and transportation condition. So you will see should be stored at so-and-so temperature, not in light, in such kind of humidity and all that. Counterfeiters are not bothered about that. And the effect of a medicine differs a lot, and sometimes it can be dangerous as well if those conditions are not met. To give you an example, let's say if a vaccine which was supposed to be stored in a freezer was not stored in freezer for months and then it is injected in your body, or what can be the consequences? People can certainly die because of that. That is just one example. There are things like full salt, half salt, and chocolate examples. So counterfeiters sometimes put some active ingredient, some medicine in their product, but not the exact amount that is recommended. Sometimes they will not put it at all. In some cases, we've seen they're putting general chalk material. So that is there. Another very important aspect of falsified medicine is off-label use. Now, what is off-label use? Off-label use is very prominent in youngsters. You would have seen some people talk about using some medicines to enhance their attention. Coffee is one example, but coffee is made for increasing your attention span. But there are medicines which are made for other purposes, but then used for some other purposes by people. They're often abused. So painkillers is another example. Some heavy dose painkillers are for killing pain, but people take it to sort of get a high out of it. So these are off-label use, and these are also as bad as counterfeit because people can have side effects and severe ones. There are medicines that claim that they can enhance memory power of people. There are a whole lot of other things that people do. There's a cancer drug that can that claims that it can increase the attention span and memory as well. So it is often abused in some of the African countries, but it has severe consequences. So that's there. And then the last one is breached LSE. So LSE is low standard supply chain measures. I touched upon it briefly when I talked about how the storage conditions can differ for certain medicines. So counterfeiters often do not consider the measures that we should be taking for transporting products from one place to other place. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. So the next one is, how do we measure that whether the product that is already there in the market is safe for people or not? So there's a body called Pharmaceutical Security Institute. It gathers all the data of all the pharma companies, and it has come to a conclusion that about 90% of the counterfeiting incidents of cases are level 3 risk, wherein people can actually die. And you will see that there are about 12 lakhs, that's the number mentioned on the PPT, wherein there have been a risk that has been mitigated by people like Shabnam, like Rachna and I, because we work day in and day out to provide safe products to people. So from 2017 onwards, I'm talking about my company's data, we saved at least 12 lakh people from consuming falsified medicine, which can vary in certain categories. It can have heavy metals, poisons, chemicals like brick, non-declared APIs. What you're not supposed to consume is also there sometimes. And non-declared excipient. Excipient is just the filler in a medication. So every medication has two major parts: an API, which is the real medicine that is supposed to be given, and then there's an excipient, which is the filler for that medicine. Some people counterfeit the API, and some people actually counterfeit the excipient. And some people who are absolutely not concerned copy the entire thing. So why I'm talking about how we saved people from consuming falsified medicine, it's not that I want to talk about what Novartis is doing. I'm really passionate about this subject, and this is an industry-wide, the entire pharmaceutical industry talks about it, how they try and save people. And there's a role that everybody who's on this webinar can play in protecting themselves, their surroundings, their families, to prevent the use of falsified medicine, to prevent counterfeiting for their own good and for the greater good of the society. So at Novartis, we take this very seriously. There are n number of things that you can read about on Novartis website. We have a position paper, how we handle these cases and things like that, all mentioned on the slide. Anybody wants more, they can go to Novartis website and they have more information there. So I'm gonna skip that slide and go to the next one. So how do we tackle this? So this is a problem that's there in the and across the globe, right? So how do we tackle this for the world? So we tackle this by being very organized, by having people in multiple countries sharing information constantly and obtaining incidents from people like you. So when we say that you need to be very careful when you're consuming pharma product, which means if you spot anything that's suspicious, there are ways and means of reporting it. Every pharma pack, every product that you see in the market will have a drug safety email ID on it, or a phone number, or a toll-free number on it. If you think that you've taken a tablet of, let's say, allergy, but you've got a headache because of it, that's not just a regular side effect. Or even if it is safe to report it. You will not be reprimanded for reporting something that is so obvious. Obvious is what you've taken it for and what effect it should show is being shown. So you've taken it for painkiller, your pain is reduced, no other symptom, you're good. If you've taken it for allergy, the allergy is not, it's still there, but you've got a rash somewhere, you should be reporting it. So coming back to the PPT, this is how we organize. We work across the company with more than 15 functions, and we have people who are like me in different parts of the world, who are constantly day in and day out working for delivering safe medicine to everybody, not just for our patients, our consumers, but for everybody. So how do we do it? So we collect a lot of intelligence. So there's an offline way of doing it, there's an online way of doing it. So we conduct extensive market searches offline, we conduct extensive online data scraping, and then we bring all those data points together to understand where these fake medicines are and try and nip that initiation point to curb the problem of counterfeiting. This is a busy slide, but it talks about where we've seen counterfeit products: eBay, Yandex, IndiaMart, Reddit, anywhere. So anyway, online, if you consider buying a pharma product, you should be extra careful. So these are some of the examples of the fake products that we've seen. You can see the conditions, how they're stored in. You can see there are injectables, there are pills, so, and it's across everywhere: Colombia, Italy, Cameroon, Mumbai, everywhere. So it's not just us who's impacted. It's not just one country, it's a global problem. How do we detect it? Because that's a question that I'm asked very regularly. We detect it using state-of-the-art technology. We do not expect this from a patient to detect whether it is a counterfeit or not, because you can, there are so many regulations. This is a highly regulated industry. Government keeps, they will keep asking us to change certain things in packaging, in dosage form. The science evolves, so we do not expect consumers and patients to do this for us, but report this as soon as you know of any consequence that is not obvious from a particular medication. So there is state-of-art technology that we use. We use mobile applications, there are computer-based applications, there are highly specialized labs for testing chemicals and drugs. So we use those. Some of those are already there on the screen. Anybody who's interested in knowing more about these and what Novartis has in their arsenal can reach out to me on social media or anywhere else where you feel. I'll have my email address towards the end of this presentation. Very quickly moving on to the next one. Do we only react when it is reported to us, or we're doing something that is proactive? Yes, we are taking all the proactive measures. We try and speed things up by having people across the globe. So there are more than 240 verifiers across the globe, 50 Authentifield mobile devices. There are 3 highly specialized internal labs costing more than several $1 million. And then there are mobile kits that are as good as the labs that we have. How do we fight it? What is the methodology we follow? So we do it using 3 different ways. We talk to public, like we are doing right now, talk to you all, ask you to be vigilant, report things. We are in touch with several agencies who run campaigns like Unreal Campaign. INTA is running Unreal Campaign. We are a platinum sponsor. We have other similar campaigns, Fight the Fakes, where we regularly talk. We train police and custom officers and work regularly with FBI, Interpol, Europol, and share best practices. And then lastly, we work with government bodies, OECD, World Health Organization, and TraceIt, to name a few. And what if we do all this, we are sort of a proactive player in the industry who's trying to control it. And it's not just Novartis who's doing it. A lot of other pharma companies are also doing it. Okay, so with that, I am wrapping up the session that I have. Just with just one thought in your mind, what would you prefer? A first copy of a medicine or the real one? All right, so think about it, and then you will have your answers, how you can contribute. All right, thank you so much. I'll give it back to Rupika now. Thank you, Rupika, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, sir. It was like a big eye opener. The questions, the presentation, everything. We keep coming across various like duplicates products, but after your presentation, oh my God, everything is secondary now. Pharma, I think if somebody is going to go wrong in this and take the fake products, it can be really life-threatening. Really eye-opener for me. Thank you a lot, sir. Thanks a lot,
Oh,
sir.
you're welcome.
And I can see the overwhelming response for the same, for all the topics as well as for this topic in the YouTube as well. So I'm sure the viewers are enjoying the session, and can really understand the importance of it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. So, so actually, I think it will be good time because we have quite a good of lot of content, and all our dear panelists have shared their views. So we are opening the floor for the questions. We already have accumulated few questions from the YouTube link from the live sessions. We've accumulated, and I've just shared the questions in the chat. I'll share my screen, and if you're okay to just answer them or just go through them. And meanwhile, all the viewers, I'll request if you have further questions, please note it down. We have a team who will be responding and collecting the information, and they'll pass it on to us. So just 1 second, I'll share my screen. Huh?
I think the first question is that are the first copy of brands legally produced, and is it okay to buy them? I'm pretty sure Pankaj will be able to give his inputs, but according to me, copy is a copy. And I think, when they say first copy, they are actually trying to say that it is a good quality copy. Pankaj, would you like to add your views?
See, this again comes back to my last thought with which I left you all. Do you want to consume, or do you trust anybody with a first copy injection that you're going to get? It's a vaccine. It's a first copy. Let's say it's a COVID vaccine.
Oh.
Would you administer it? The chances are that you will probably get COVID because of it, versus just getting an original one. So there's no first copy. A copy is a copy, and an original product is an original product. It comes, so an original product comes with certain amount of reputation, certain amount of trust that you have in it, and the person who's manufacturing a copy can just disappear tomorrow, and there's no reputation that he has to maintain. There is no trust that he has made with the society, with the consumers. So I don't think first copy is anything as such. That's my part. Thanks, Rachna.
Thank you, Pankaj. That was useful. Are you going to take the questions, Rupika? How are we going to go?
Yes, ma'am. Can you just see my screen? I'll just read it out. Before that, I would like to confirm.
I think any of the panelists can take it, whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, I think that would be better. So I'll just read out the question.
Shall I read the question?
Sorry? Okay, I'll just go through the question. So we have a question from Mr. Anand R. Deshpande. He says that if slides are used from SlideShare for PowerPoint presentation, what are the IP law requirements and the consequences?
So there are provisions under the Copyright Act. They are called fair use provisions. So if any content which is protected under the copyright law is used for education purposes and not for commercial provisions under the Copyright Act, then it constitutes a fair use. But at the same time, one has to give credit to the owner of the copyright, that what is the source. That is very important. So I hope I'm clear.
Can we take the next question now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So the third question is, sometimes there are modifications in packaging. Does it have to be intimated by the authority?
The question is asked by Rukmini Jamdar.
Yes.
Pankaj, do you want to take this?
Yes, let me take this. So it depends on the industry. So different industries have different levels of control by government bodies. So I'll give you an example of pharma industry. If I was to change even a comma in the existing packaging of a pharmaceutical product, it has to run through the regulatory bodies that are there. So nobody can change packaging. No company can change packaging just like that. So it has to go through a proper process of approvals, and then only the change in packaging is allowed by the authority. There are smallest claims that are there mentioned that this is for cough. And if you want to say this is also for sneezing, then also this is a new indication that that is taken very seriously. There are tons of data that needs to be produced specifically in pharma industry. It is very popular these days, clinical trials and whether this has efficacy or not. I saw somebody saying that one of the medications that everybody is talking about, which is like a final bullet for COVID, you would read that there is so much of data that is been shared by those companies with the regulators. It is being reviewed regularly. So it's not that easy. It will not happen overnight. The only thing that you as a consumer can do, as a patient or a caregiver, you can do is be vigilant. If it is offered on a discount which is unreal, you should have your suspicion. All right, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So the next question is from Ms. Vishali. Using slide share PPTs and videos by lecturers in any way an infringement of IPR?
I think this is a similar question which we already answered about using content of another copyright owner. If it is used for education purposes, it is a fair use if it is not used for the commercial purposes, but it is very important to identify the source from where you got the information and who is the owner of the copyright. So as a best practice, that should be done.
Yeah, just to add to what Rachna just said, so two major important things that are not considered copyright is for educational use. If content is used and duly acknowledged from where it has been taken and the copyright owner has been given that acknowledgement. The second one is research purposes. So if somebody is using something which is copyrighted for research purposes, it would fall under the defense that we have under Copyright Act. So these are the two good examples of.
Pankaj, forgot the point.
No, that's absolutely fine. We're all helping each other.
Thank you so much, sir and ma'am. So the next question is from Mr. Ashish Garg. The question is, sometimes real products are not up to the standard, then what can we do?
Rachna, you want to take or should I take it?
Yeah, it's for the company.
All right. So if the real product is not up to the standard, what you can do? You can do several things. First of all, try and identify whether it is the original product or not. Complain it to the company. If they verify that it is an original product and it has not performed as per the requirement or as per your expectation, then you may want to revisit it. If you're 100% sure it was the original product but still not performed, it depends on industry to industry. But in general, a lot of people would go and file consumer complaints. So I've had this issue with one of the apparel industry. I bought certain apparels and then it did not perform as per the standards it maintains, and then I had to file a consumer complaint, and it was resolved very easily.
I think another option is to change your brand.
Yeah, but then you have spent your money.
Yeah, you spent your money.
All right, let's go to the next one, please.
Yes, sir. So Mr. Manish has a question. He says, let's say XYZ is selling a mouse pad. If I find their manufacturer is in China and rebrand their exact same mouse pad with ABC, etc., will this be considered as counterfeiting?
Rachna, I would suggest you take this one. This is very close to what you do.
Actually, I think this question, I'm just trying to understand the background from where it is coming. I think it is, about generic products being manufactured in China, and then people can brand it according to the way they like. So if my understanding of the question is correct, then that is fine. So that in that case, you're not violating anybody's rights. You're not infringing upon anyone's rights, if that is the question.
Yeah.
Goods available in China, manufactured in China, which are not branded.
Yeah, just to add to what just Rachna said, is what she said is absolutely correct. Just to add to that is, as long as you are not imitating the product, let's say one shoe is Nike and the other one is, let's say, your brand Rahul, as long as that is different, you should be okay. But what also is important is that there are more than one IP in just one product. So if I was to give you an example, a Coke bottle has multiple IPs in it. So let's say you've got the same bottle, same liquid in it, and you've pasted a different label on it with name Rahul on it and not Coca-Cola. You can still violate somebody's IP because the bottle shape is covered under a different IP. So be very careful before you do that. Yes, if everything is different and not protected by other IP, you should be okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we'll take up although we have so many questions, but we'll take a few more. And then, okay. So the next question is from Mr. Ayush Agarwal. What about maladulteration in food sector?
Okay, this Pankaj, pharmaceutical and food sector.
Yeah. So adulteration is adulteration, whether it is maladulteration or any kind of adulteration. It would not typically violate on the face of it, by the looks of it, it will not violate IP, but this is a serious crime once again. And if it was not food sector, it was pharma sector, it would have regulatory actions against it. Raids can be conducted. Food sector, I'm also pretty sure there are cases like that wherein adulteration has been considered as very serious, and apart from just IP, there are other acts which cover adulteration and it has legal consequences. So that also is very important to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I think it answers the question of of the user. We have few more questions, but actually we are running short of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we can end it here.
Yeah, ma'am. So I'll forward all these questions, all the users, all the viewers who are seeing the this live chat. I'll mail all these questions to the teachers, to the respected sir and ma'am, and they'll be able, if they'll be able to share the answers, we'll find a way back with you.
We'll post it. Yeah, we'll email it to participants. We can find out some way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can move ahead with the program. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. So now may I humbly request Dr. Rashmi Maurya, web co-convener, to present the vote of thanks.
Yeah, hello.
Can we take Rashmi on the screen, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, hi. I'm Dr. Rashmi Maurya, department member, BMS. So on behalf of BMS Department, KPP Hinduja College of Commerce, I would like to propose vote of thanks. The very first thank award I would like to give our principal, Dr. Meenu Madlani, who has given us the guidance and always the support for taking up such initiative. And the next one, we would like to thank ED Fly for becoming the education partner and the resource person, starting with the Miss Shabnam Khan. She has given a very brief introduction and a very, you can say, good introduction regarding the what is IP and why there is a need to protect the IP. Next, Rachna ma'am, she has given a very good insight about the product, how the products are copied, and very minor difference between the real and the fake product, which we generally do not mind or we do not find while purchasing the products. And Pankaj, you had given a very good insight about the pharma industry. As you said, those 11 industries which are very, you can say, at the risk of the counterfeiting, and out of that, the second one is the pharma. And it's very dangerous if we get such kind of medicines which are duplicate in general language when we say, or the copied one. So and to all the participants who had given their opinion, their questions while going in this online platform. We would like to thank everybody and hope to have a very soon like this, a very good session again in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you so much, Edfly. Thank you so much. So we officially declare that the webinar is closed here. I have announcement for all the participants. We are soon sharing the link for the certificates. There is a small quiz there, so please attend that, and the certificates shall be emailed to you all on your email address within a day's time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks all for the participation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.